All right, so welcome back to a novel thought. Today is our little deontological office discourse conversation. I am your host today, Colton Huskinson.
Awesome. I'm Rody.
I'm Tyler.
Today we have kind of an interesting one. I've taken a number of more or less controversial subjects around AI, and I've built out a list, and I'm gonna give it to you guys, and you guys have to take those items. So, for example, my first one on my list is job replacement, and you have to say yes, it's ethical, no, it's not ethical, and then you have to give me a moral maxim that under the deontological framework that says it is that justifies that decision. So we're not deontological philosophers. We're not experts on deontology. I've chosen this particular moral framework because it gives a kind of an interesting black or white decision making. We have to come up with a rule for it. It gives us a little bit of an avenue to discuss the ethics of some of these things because they are controversial. And so the rule I've given you guys, I've made you a very simple math problem, which is says that this thing, so job replacement, if it's good, plus always good. So it has to be always good for it to be ethical. If there is a situation in which it is wrong, then Kant would say it is never right. And so it must always be wrong. So I'm going to read you a little quote from Kant. It's his universalizability principle, which is act only according to that maxim which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law without contradiction. So effectively, he's saying if it is good in one context, then it can only be good if it's ethical in all contexts. So, questions on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what happens if we can't find a satisfying argument? Does that mean that basically there is no case or that we haven't got down to the crux of it?
I would say, given our experiences, like moral philosophers, we either don't know enough about the nuance of the argument, or it isn't ethical because we can't find a convincing maxim, at least within the context of this conversation. We can't find a convincing maxim that says it's universally ethical.
I guess what I'm saying is maybe the problem could be subdivided further to where there is a place that it could be
That's
ethical.
also highly likely. And I'm going to be interested to see how we kind of parse this a little bit because I think a lot of these we will probably ultimately have to subdivide down a little bit into some sort of granular nuance. The fun part about deontology is it's so tricky to navigate because you really like the example we were talking about before we started recording of like, is it always ethically good to consume food? Or like, does everyone have a right to eat food? Right? You brought that up. And the conversation that we sort of unfolded from there was like, well, we don't think that everyone equally has a right to eat food because in the event of like your airplane crashes in the Andes, we all agree that we feed the women and children first. So clearly, men in that context have a less of a right to eat food, right? So we might not say that it is universally always true that men or that everyone has the equal right to eat food because you can come up with a context where it's not true. So you might not say that there's a universal maxim for rights to eat food under that specific framework.
So by your thinking though, maybe the situation we can define a proper maxim that is ethical as opposed to a universal principle.
Yes, but then you wouldn't be able to say that everyone has a universal, the equal right to eat, because
Right.
Kant would say that's untrue because you can't define it universally, therefore it is not true. You could say potentially you could make an argument that says, um, that there's a hierarchy that women and children that it's universally true that women and children deserve to eat food more than men, or that there's a tiered structure to it. You might be able to make that argument, although I think culturally contextually it would change, and that's one of the big challenges with deontological ethics. The sort of the counter to deontological ethics is consequentialism, so utilitarian ethics, which sort of the flip side of that is Kantism. You can say nothing is ethical almost, and then consequentialism, you can get yourself to a place where everything is ethical. So kind of challenging. um Tyler, did you have any thoughts on that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. You guys ready to jump in the list?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with you, Tyler, and then I'll go to you, Rody. And I just want right now, is it ethical? Is it not ethical? And then we'll dive into your guys' arguments. So, job replacement, is it ethical? AI job replacement.
At top level, no.
I would like the question to be defined a little bit more because there's a lot of things that have replaced jobs over the years. And if it is specifically about AI, I think there's maybe some clarification probably should do, where it's like what industries and what types of things, because the Industrial Revolution had a lot of things that where it replaced traditional things, but then expanded new jobs and stuff like that too.
Counterpoint to you, though.
Okay.
What presupposes the Industrial Revolution was an ethical replacement of jobs?
Yeah, I guess my personal belief is that it wasn't ethical, but that it was more of a how people approached working with jobs and what it meant to live with capital, And so I think that if you were to define it on like a specific industry, I don't think that it is ethical to view this utility as something that is by its product going to specifically seek out job replacement. However, if it is a product of something that you're working on where you're trying to, like, for example, like we know many people that have processes where they do something and they click 1,000 different things that could just be like one action if they knew how to use a computer better. And it's like you train them how to do something, and it's like, well, did I take away their process for the sake of efficiency? And it's like, and some people will be like, well, they love the process. And I think there's a difference between that and saying like, I'm able to find a way to just like reduce like human cognitive load.
So I think
in a
that's a
way.
different question, though.
Okay.
So I do subdivide this a little bit, like replacing pieces of your own job or replacing, like creating workflow with AI. That is one thing. And that's like a personal decision, which I do want to get into. But if let's say I'm a tech company and I set out to build a tool, an AI tool that replaces the job of an administrative specialist, right? That is one of the jobs that is probably likely at risk. Is that at its face value and at its highest level, is that ethical?
I guess the reason why I'm having pause is because I think you're defining ethics of an outcome instead of an action.
Welcome to Kantism.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
And that's why
legitimately,
it's
this is
hard.
Kantism. So
Yeah,
what you've said by doing this is that it is not ethical because you can't come up with a universal maxim that says it is. It has to be universally true, otherwise it is not ethical.
Like here's an
Under
attempt.
Kantism.
I guess what I'm saying is like, is a natural disaster ethical or not ethical?
So that's a fun one. That gets you into a lot of religious philosophy, but I would say no. If you can, because it gets challenging when you try to apply ethics to a natural order. That's probably never strictly fair. But if you think that there is deification behind that natural disaster, then you would have to say, if you believe you have an ethical religious figure, you have to then say that that is in fact ethical. Or it's not, and then you don't have an ethical God, for example. So anyway, we're parsing this into the weeds a little bit. So what I'm hearing is not ethical, and then depends.
Well, I guess like, okay, like to be very specific on my point, I view it as two different sides. There's the what happens because of the thing and your action causing the thing to cause the action. So like I'm building a better technique. That technique can be used for good and evil, right? But if you only look at like what that technique is used for through the product of like,
But if the outcome is taking someone's job away from them, like I'm now unemployed because of your technique, is that ethical?
There is a difference of job replacement and job transformation.
that's true, and that's probably where I see the difference.
So this is genuinely why I wanted to frame it this way,
Yeah.
because this is the meat of it. So okay, I want to hear a maxim, Tyler, from you
Okay.
of why. What is your maxim, your universal maxim for why it's not ethical?
So I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna try to, and then I bet there's like 7 holes you can poke.
Okay.
And that'll be my point of not.
Perfect.
AI must replace, if replacing jobs, must provide an equal or greater job in its place. I think that's as close as I can get.
To ethical?
Yeah.
Okay.
As a universal maximum, if you are using AI to replace jobs, which is a little counterintuitive because it says that then you're not replacing their job, which is kind of my point.
Yeah, that would have been my counter. Is like, okay, but that's not job replacement.
Yeah.
That's job building jobs somehow.
Yeah.
Well, related though, I kind of think, in a super weird example that came to my mind, if you're building a highway and you're going to remove houses along that highway that you're trying to build into, like if you're going to also build them equal or better value for a new housing that they can be like rehoused to,
Oh, you're
then
talking
does that
the
cancel out
okay.
the ethics of it?
We're building a highway.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful highway. It will dramatically increase commerce between two major cities. It's a huge trade route.
Yeah.
However, the highway runs straight through sacred native land.
Yeah.
And it's going to destroy, a millennia of cultural significance.
Mm-hmm.
Is that ethical?
I would say no.
Then
I don't know. Ask a pipeline that went through
Yeah.
the Dakotas.
because this gets into this and this honestly becomes a little bit of a consequentialist discussion, but when we're saying that like the greater good of the highway building outweighs the weight and the emotional impact of destroying people's existing homes, even though we're going to build them bigger, better homes later, a utilitarianist could say that is an ethical trade-off, right? The math works out.
Mm.
A deontological ethicist or a Kantian ethics would probably say that's never ethical, right? Because
destruction
there
of a
is
home.
no they like Kantianism basically says that it's never okay to lie, even if you're lying to protect someone, because the moment you lie and there's an unwanted outcome associated with that, you own that outcome.
Right, exactly. And I guess Kantianism is probably, how do you find the lowest common denominator of ethics?
I think that's true. Yeah, it's rule based ethics where you have to find a rule. And granted, we may be treating deontological ethics a little bit too superficially here, but that's sort of the problem. Okay, so what about as like replacing your own job or as a workflow tool for yourself within the scope of your own work? Is that ethical?
I'm
Tyler?
trying to think of a maxim. I would put
Just
it
yay or nay.
in yay.
I would probably say also yes.
Okay. I don't think I would disagree with that. Why is it universally true that it's ethical, Tyler?
God, it's hard because some of it is the fact of like there is a little bit of choice. It is your own job. If you're the one that gets to like control the thing,
Mhm.
I made an automation for my own projects or processes or whatever. I think that makes a big difference of it. However, the maxim building on that is also tricky. Unless you're going to say like, if it can be automated, I shall automate it. But that
I'm gonna throw one counter at you because I'm very interested in it, and then I'll turn it to you, Rody. So, are you a person?
yes.
If you replace, we already decided that it's not okay to replace other people's jobs.
Mhm.
But if you're a human and you replace part of your own job or your own job entirely,
Uh-huh.
you're still a human. How is that ethical? You've replaced your own job, but you're not separate from being a person.
Hmm.
Well,
What if I hate myself?
I think it's because
Masochism, interesting.
we have
The
a will.
masochistic ethical framework.
It's a willing employment. Like we've jumped into a job saying, I want to work here. Like, you can argue if like you have to have a job to provide and all the other things too. And I think that that's a byproduct, but at least in the US, you are entering a job through your it's on you. Like, like I could choose to go to a different job. And so for that, I'm owning the outcomes of my own choices on that job, including transforming my role all the time. Like some people's roles don't change for certain types of jobs, but like I feel like we all work in ones where that changes on a daily basis. And so process is the constant of change.
So, do you think, to the counter that I threw at Tyler, do you think you can separate I from we? If that makes sense.
Yes. And then I also think there's an interesting thing that we can add to this too of um, this happened actually not that long ago when we switched from paper to digital, where like people's processes were fully defined by how good they were at typing, how good they were at like bringing and filing things in cabinets. There was whole roles that were dedicated to like information discovery and retrieval and ways to send documents to other companies. Like, and there was a lot of pushback when digital transformation first came out, but like it's hard to find a lot of people that would say they wouldn't want a computer in their process now having seen the benefits after a long time. But there was a period of time in which a lot of people thought it was unethical because they were just removing a lot of it from their role.
Interesting. I don't disagree with you. I think that you can probably arrive at a universal rule for replacing or optimizing your own job on the basis of like self gratification or self health, right? Where you can say that if the thing is good for me and it improves my quality of life and that is full and it is separate from the impact to other people's quality of life, that is universally always true. Now, that gets tricky when you start applying that to all different aspects of self, right? Because it might give me a lot of joy to murder one of you guys, right? But that doesn't make it universally true that I should murder you guys.
Yeah.
So it gets tricky, but I think generally in this context, I would agree with you.
Yeah, because I think the specific part that you can make it always true is when you are specifically in a willing employment that you have control of exiting. As long as that is true, you should be able to uh, always be able to transform some part of your workflow ethically.
Tyler?
Well, this is, I think, a little bit where it's going to be real hard not to, even whenever it's like, is it ethical? But is that necessarily you're saying ethical on the actual basis of deontological or what has happened?
Yeah.
Because it does change the idea of like,
Yeah.
to use the easiest deontological ethics that we all know is like Christianity's 10 Commandments is a deontological argument. Straight up. You will follow these 10 rules, period. Unless, and then there's all the unlesses. And you go, well, it was justified. What have you? Like job replacement can be super simple into the idea of like, I'm going to swap a flow because I hate doing it. It's a pain, it slows me down, it slows everyone down.
There's a better process.
It's a better process. But if anyone else can take that idea and suddenly ruin or put people out of work and there's not an option of UBI or something else.
And that was the
Then
sort of the
suddenly
core of
it-
my pushback of like, can you separate the I from we?
Yeah.
And I don't actually think you can, but if you contextualize it only to yourself, I think it could be an ethical thing. But that is a subdivision of the overall question. So interesting. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one. Is it ethical to use AI tools for hiring? Particularly, I'm going to make it even more specific for screening resumes. Tyler.
What I know about the tech and of many reports, no.
I don't know if I said this at the top. It is important to note that you guys both work in AI. So you both have knowledge and experience in this area.
Correct.
So talk to me about, you said no.
No. So there's actually a very good chapter on this in a book called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho, I recommend, where in the most, call it a Harvard study way, there was a study that was done that showed whenever they did, I think it was just a software, more basic type of resume screening, 'cause it was prior to large language models and AI as we currently kind of know it, that if you had a name that sounded like a Black woman or was even in the realm of like semantically searching that realm, you were selected way less, like far less often. And in the idea of large language models and many of the ML like use cases and the way that they work on a fundamental level, they are going to work to the point of their training data. So if you have training data that is biased, which is the case, there is no such thing as unbiased data, period.
Yep.
Kind of a
Right.
great fallacy of the conversation a lot of the
Literally
time.
called weights and biases. So.
Yeah, they're literally called weights and biases. You will just exacerbate mistakes of the past, period. Like, and if you're not, then you're essentially not using it anymore. And then, like,
Yeah.
there's obviously the fine edges of like, I need to look for these 3 experiences because I need somebody with greater than 3.5 years in something, and you have a tool that can do that. That's one thing, but like the overall use of it has such, I think, a greater risk.
So is it fair to sort of summarize what you said a little bit in that, like, if there was such a thing as unbiased data sets, then there could be a universal maxim for the ethics of using it in hiring. But because that fundamentally doesn't exist, it defeats the argument, and it is an unethical practice.
Correct.
Interesting.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I disagree about the unbiased data sets because I also just don't think that's possible, even if we had a pure data set. But what I do think is we can take steps towards making it ethical. And that involves one, like making it double blind, like you take off the names, the information, the human side of it to the qualifications. And so you have a selection criteria that's based on one thing, normalized, and then separately you have different phases that you've already pre-selected a pool, and then you need humans to be able to go from there. And humans aren't unbiased either. There's other things you can do, like using more ML. Like, I mean, like anybody could argue that like a database query could at some point like involve AI, and like at what point is the spectrum of like, should this be allowed or not? Like, should it only be physical papers that they're handling? And what happens if one fell on the floor and like just didn't get, like there's so many like ways to do it. And I think it's also met with this, is it unethical for people to use AI to submit their job applications and write cover letters and also like include fully generated resumes?
Such an interesting,
because it's on both sides of it too.
Counterpoint of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me ask you this then, both of you. Are humans screening resumes, is that actually more ethical than having an AI do it?
I don't, I mean,
because we are attached to this idea that humans do human things, and we want to see a human look at a human product, right? We're very emotionally attached to that. But we know that racial biases exist. We know that like socioeconomic biases exist. We know that some people just, like, I've been a hiring manager. It can be very challenging to read resumes and give every single resume an equal shake, because sometimes when you've read hundreds of them, you're like, oh, I don't like the way this guy formatted it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that is a bias, and that's not fair
100%.
to the person, because
Yeah.
they made just a slightly different formatting choice. So it was like,
Or you read it at 11:45.
or I read it at 11:45, right? And is that somehow more ethical than a biased large language model reviewing it or whatever?
Yeah. And I think it's actually like you have to do those steps to normalize it and double blind it so you can remove as many of those possible levers as possible.
So we should use the scientific method to do.
Well, I mean, it's just
Kind
like if you're doing like a
don't get me me on the scientific method, Rody. I'm a big
But I'm more
big
thinking
stan.
like if you want to get any like reasonable data from like a focus group or any type of like information, like you can't, or even actually AI, like you can't have training data like into the training process, because like it'll just learn the answers, and you just have to like
Correct.
you have to take many steps to like have that clean room so that when you can make that decision, even if you're tired or even if you do whatever, like you at least have the best chance of success. And the problem is you're rolling that dice whether it's a human or and it's inferred on a
So
model.
maybe the high takeaway is it's just screening resumes is never ethical.
Well,
Honestly, I don't know.
I think
Might be
Or not
right.
universally ethical.
I don't know if they are universally ethical, because there's even down to whenever I've had to look at resumes now, doing like different things, trying to bring on students and what have you, where it is, looked at 300, and it does become to the point where it's like, do you bias to where you went to school, previous work areas, particular titles, um, like very strange things, and unless you're like very aware of what things you're noticing, but at the same time, are those things that you're looking at like needing to hire a software person, and you're like, well, I need the actual engineer, not the database maintainer. I need, a full stack.
Yeah.
So I am looking for full stack experience. That is something I need. Whereas that's like an objective job set and skills you're looking at versus, but we've always had good luck hiring people from Amazon. Type of bias.
Well, I
and
think
at that point, you're leaning on their hiring process.
Is it ethical to reject people though?
Well, I think it's like hiring is one of those interesting things where you have to make a decision and it affects someone's life. But I think the danger is some people are like, well, if it's not ethical anyway, and regardless, then might as well take out the effort. And I think that's where like you have to get as close as you can to making it ethical, not just even if the process and all these other things are unethical by themselves. Like you can do as many of those micro steps towards that direction to where it's further away from if you didn't try.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. And I put it in the list as surveillance ? But I'm going to refine it a little bit. Using AI to surveil domestic populations for crime prevention. Is that ethical?
That's easy for me. No.
Nope. Yes or no?
I don't think so. But
I'm tempted. So I've sat on oral boards before, which is like for certification processes. And every time somebody gives me an I don't think so answer, I'm like, you think or you know?
I don't know.
And I almost just did that to you. So you think or you know?
Well, I mean, the reason why I even have a pause is we did this during COVID. We did contact tracing. Like we did it it was an unethical thing that we did, but we committed to it as a population to then delete, but we did it through the guise of like trying to save as many people as possible.
Remember, Kant would say though, if there is the possibility where it is unethical, then it is always unethical. So if we're framing it strictly in deontological terms, the answer has to be no.
Sure.
Based on what I just understood, but I may be misunderstanding what you're saying.
Yeah. Fair.
So Tyler, why isn't it ethical? Give me a defeating argument for there not being a possible universal maxim.
I wanted to just literally go see Captain America, whatever the one is where they had the helicarriers. I would, to guess the future of how those things go, whenever you create probabilistic crime prevention type of scenarios, one, you don't allow the literal choice of the crime being committed, and two, it is just going to attack the lower class because that's where crime comes from. You can prove that every single day of the week with basically any data set. That is.
So I think this is the exact same problem as hiring, because there is no such thing as an unbiased data set, and it is going to make decisions on the basis of an implicit bias that was given to it.
Yep.
To be fair though, just like the humans have just as many issues in that process as well.
Yeah. But
correct.
No disagreement from me on that. Like it's also I mean, you can look at it like socioeconomic disparities across America. That's like, well, obviously, and we already have a surveillance state that exists without AI, right? There's cameras everywhere. There's like stoplight cameras and traffic cameras and all these things, and decisions are made every single day based on biases by humans. So I don't think humans have like a moral upper hand. I personally don't think there's a way to arrive at an ethical way to do it with AI tools.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think AI doesn't actually introduce any new problems. It just like highlights existing ones.
Yeah.
Kind of the biggest issue with a lot of what is a already very biased like well-known biased issue that we have is it is purely a force multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
Those that were already doing fine will do asymptotically
Mm-hmm.
better, and those that are doing worse will do far worse.
Mm-hmm.
Which at that point, if you want to go consequentialism,
Mm-hmm.
where is it going? You can probably make the argument constantly of like, well, the overall worst of this
The
will
greater
happen.
good.
The greater good.
But one of the nice things about
L plus ratio.
being a human, though, in all this is like we have the option to short circuit things. Like we have the option to decide when, like we're not mathematical simulations that only ever go to one direction. Like there's at every point we should be recognizing when things are unethical or could be more ethical, and we're constantly adjusting. And I think that's like also all of these things on this list are also highlighting like you have to be aware of these going into it, like because that helps you with those decisions. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm going to make this small tool that's going to do something, and then I'm like not thinking about all the impacts that it could have, it's like then you've just built a tool and none of the research, and it's like building's great, but you also are responsible for artifacts as well.
I agree. I'm probably gonna not dive into the number 4 because I think it's the exact same conversation we just had. But
Yeah.
when you said you have to be responsible for the artifacts, I was just imagining you build a really sophisticated system that is an autonomous Nerf gun machine. Because number 4 is autonomous war machines, right? So you build out this really sophisticated system for like a Nerf gun, and then a military defense contractor goes, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
Let's take that. And then you built the system that becomes autonomous war machines that's killing people in foreign lands.
Good thing that already hasn't happened.
But then you have
Right.
someone else that like takes that same machine and is like, wow, we can use it to like, I don't know, like target vaccines and birds and like can get them in the air. It's like it's kind of a crazy thing where that you can build something and then once it leaves your hands, it's like it can go many directions. And it's like, well, am I responsible for only the negative outcomes and none of the good outcomes? Or is it here are all the possible things you can do with it, and I have to either say this exists or it doesn't, and if it does exist, I'm responsible for the full spectrum.
I think there's a really interesting conversation that can be had about the ethics of progress.
Right.
Because like the most ethical thing to do is to find a healthy status quo and change nothing.
Okay, I guess
Potentially, right? But we don't do that, and I think most of us, our gut would say, well, that's silly. You have to because we could find the better, and sometimes the better makes it worse. And I don't have an answer. I just think there's an interesting conversation of like, what is the ethics of just progress?
But I guess, okay, as like just to make it concrete, is it ethical to do cancer research?
I think the gut says yes, it's ethical to cure cancer, but the consequence of that goes, well, what other things are we discovering along the way? Or, hey, if we cure cancer, do we take, what is it, oncology? Is that the study of cancer?
I believe so.
I think so.
We take away all oncologists' jobs.
No, I'm saying
Is that
in the
ethical?
pursuit of curing cancer, you also have a way for medicine to target anything you want and to be able to use as like a weapon.
Bioweapon. Well, yeah, I was getting there as well. Like, if we find that's why I said like the other things you discover along the way is like the consequences, like a bioweapon or, let's be honest, eugenics.
Yeah, but
right?
what I mean is like,
Yeah.
but
'Cause
the
cancer treatment-
success of cancer research means you are able to successfully target. And so like that is the outcome. And it's just that is an application of the outcome.
And I'm saying I think you can make an argument that says it is curing cancer is the same nebulous ethical thing as progress.
I see.
Right? Depends where you want to apply ethics. And like you said, artifacts, and do you own the artifact, the ethics of the consequences of the artifact? Because I think all of us would go, well, yeah, outside of the abstract, we should cure cancer because cancer sucks.
Yeah.
But if we know that there's going to be a bioweapon that comes out of it, a utilitarian might say, well, it's better to have cancer than the bioweapon.
I mean, you could look at space exploration the same way.
Yeah. I think that's a fairly reasonable analogy. Okay. Let's dive into this next one because I think it's an interesting conversation. Using AI as sources of information.
I have a clarifying
Yeah, I was about to
question.
say, can you clarify that? Can you define what you mean?
What's
For
your...
the retrieval of information or as sources of information on their own?
So I'm a college student and I'm writing an essay and I cite in APA format, right?
Of ChatGPT.
I cite ChatGPT.
But
Is that ethical?
But did it also like cite its sources and its copy?
Who knows? Maybe it hallucinated everything. I cite and I say concretely that AI is my source of information. And you can take it out of the academic setting and you can apply it to I'm a lawyer. And my research for this case, I used ChatGPT or whatever large language model.
My teachers didn't let me use Wikipedia, so I'm still bitter.
So according to one thing anecdotally that needs some citation, across most meta studies, Wikipedia is actually more accurate than most textbooks.
And according to my teacher, but
yeah,
your teacher might have been wrong.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Easy. For that example, no.
I don't know. I think Notebook LM is a great example of like using AI in a way that is specifically used in an education setting where it is grounded on your information. You can look up every single source and it'll say this came from this PDF on this page, this came from whatever. Now, that is an interesting choice to cite it in some MLA paper or whatever because you're saying
I said APA.
Oh, APA. Yeah,
Sorry,
I did MLA. So
you're getting 0 points on formatting because you cited in the wrong style guide.
I think
I would have accepted Chicago.
I think it's interesting because you're citing
My disgust.
an artificial.
I have a Chicago guide in that tub right there. It's like this thick. Sorry, Rody, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think you're citing an artificial thing or something that is like a reflection of the source of truth, and I think you could take that all the way down, right? You could say, well, then the thing I cited from was actually a book by someone that actually was doing it based on this current event, and that's actually not the real thing. It's like, so you have to find some ground truth that you're deciding is backing up your point. And I think there are narrow cases where you can define that it is ethical to use it as a source of information, but I don't think it is universally correct in terms of like this is like holds up in court kind of a thing. Like I don't think
universal maxim.
I don't think it's undefiable or indefiable or whatever.
So based on
or infallible. Sorry,
based on the math equation I gave you at the top, it's not ethical.
Well, I mean, you can.
Everything.
I think you can copy it. Like I think actually.
So let me give you an example. I'm a surgeon, and I'm planning my operation, critical operation, and I go pull up pick a large language model of your choice, and I read that guidance, and I go, okay, that's how I'm going to plan this operation, and then I go do it. Regardless of the outcome, would you say that is an ethical doctor?
Yeah, I guess like just to make it a little bit more concrete for argument's sake, let's say, is it ethical to like attach an image in the thing? Because an image can be copied and you may not have the rights to it.
Specifically as a source of information. So I don't know that attaching an image is more concrete. Specifically, is that doctor an ethical doctor for using a large language model to plan his operation, his or her operation?
If they're using a medical backed LLM, like there's like full industries built around like trying to give them that resource. But I mean, that it's tricky because like there's a huge spectrum of things that you can type in and call it an LLM response. But like some are purpose built specifically for information retrieval.
The thing that I'm sort of curious about though is like that is not a peer reviewed source of information. You can say that it's referencing things, but we do know that it hallucinates. They do make things up. Whereas if he goes to his textbook that is a peer reviewed by a quorum of other doctors for that surgery, we go, well, that is an ethical decision because we have peer review on it. But if he specifically goes and just queries a large language model, I don't see how that could ever be ethical.
Except for the purpose-built solutions that are literally made to only ground on their own research and peer papers.
Yeah, the hard part there is they're not deterministic, so it's still not a true lookup, even with setting temperature to 0 or 1. I always forget which way it is. That actually grounds it to the most like exact answer that it can pull from source data. That's sort of like if you have sourcing, that is one thing is that it's a collecting of sources that is
RAG, to be specific.
yeah, like in that sense. But a lot of this, whenever you're like looking at sources of information, if you take it out of even like science world, like I'm looking up science thing, I think the easier one is if you drop it out of anything that we can definitively say is fact, or at least fact of the day. We know cancer cells do blah. Maybe we're slightly wrong, but as of now, that is like truth as we hold it. I think in those cases, a lot of times you can go, they pulled up from here, here's sources, whatever. But in the opposite of source of information of what did X country do? Well, the LLM told me blah.
Well, I guess like the reason why I think that is still true, because a doctor can, when he is going to review his book, could have picked up the 10th edition instead of the 20th edition, and the technique changed, but like he still pulled it out.
But this isn't a conversation about the ethics of grabbing books or using books.
Or citing sources, though.
Right. This is a conversation. This is, in the example I gave, this is a question of like the ethics of that doctor using it as his reference for doing an operation.
That's what I'm saying. If the ethics is applying that source of information, like if the alternative was that he was going to go grab an excerpt from a book, like there's just as many things that can cause them to grab the wrong book.
Right, but it's not a question of like, are there other ethical things that could happen that are also wrong? The question is it universally true that using your AI as a source of information is ethical?
Well, and then there's also the case of like you can write the doc, but then is it for himself? Is it for him providing it to patients? Is it for him publishing it, like with peer review? You know?
Specifically for an operation.
I got a way to simplify it. In the idea of if it is ethical or not, let's take out all consequence. It's always right. Is it ethical still? You don't know if it's always right or not. It is always right. So for our case, the consequence, it's always right. He doesn't know that, but it is always right. Is it ethical? Would that system be ethical? If doctor doesn't know, it's perfectly right, though. Or kid citing it in some book report.
Kant would say yes. If it is always right, then it's universally true. That it's
universally true.
Yeah. Because again, we got to not equivocate or like conflate the complexity of like other information sources, right?
Yeah.
We know all information sources have errors. So, and there's no such thing as an always right information source. And so maybe the resulting conclusion of this is that there's no ultimate ethical way to gather information. And that may very well be true. When you specifically apply it to AI, I don't think you can arrive at a universally true. I don't think you can find that universal maxim.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah.
If you use AI, it's good.
All right, let's move on. I think in a similar. Okay, I'm actually going to skip to number 11. The ethics of using AI as a romantic partner. Is that ethical?
I'm going to go with no, with my gut.
I vote sad.
Sad, but is sad unethical?
Yeah, it's sad. Bummer.
So why isn't it ethical?
Because I'm sad about it. Oh, I feel bad. You told her. Yeah, wait, shit. This is a.
I'm gonna take
deontological ethics.
I'm gonna take the opposing position for the sake of argument.
Let's be specific. Romantic partner or friend? Because I think it could change.
We'll start with romantic partner, and maybe we dive into friend. So I'm going to posit, and this is my argument, and I'm curious how you guys defeat it, that it is always ethical for me to choose an AI as a romantic partner because it gives me happiness it doesn't impact anyone else,
Mm.
and I have greater joy because of it. Therefore, it is always true that AI partners are ethical.
And let's break down the always. I think that
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the very sad cases of the AI psychosis, the detaching from actual loved ones and personal relationships,
or the inability to understand if it is real or not.
Yeah, I'm probably in the AI psychosis bucket,
Mhm.
but yeah, that like very um I don't want to say delusion, but probably
I would
might be the
say
right
there's
word.
enough cases with mental health that would take it out of the always bucket for me. That even if you are healthy and you can handle it and do whatever, that is not universally true for all people. Like,
So is the argument then that because some people have deleterious responses to it, that it cannot be universally, it's not a universal maxim?
well, it's like I I also think that not everybody can handle social media and a bunch of the other things that most people do on a daily basis, and there's just a variety of reasons why that's true, and it's like maybe the device is unethical for everyone, but like, if these other conditions are met, like, I don't know, maybe it changes in a more narrow subdivided problem.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I don't think it's an ethical thing. I think it's scary that like that is kind of the trajectory of these tools for some people.
Oh, very much so. They
But
just delayed the triple X version of ChatGPT,
mm,
but they are planning on releasing it.
but I mean, to your
Well,
point though,
okay.
like to play the
Devil's
devil's advocate
advocate.
there, it's like in the subdivided problem, if you have the mental fortitude and the willingness and all these other clarifications, one could argue that that part is specifically ethical, but that's unethical on the whole of like the general application of it.
Yeah, I think
As in, like, basically anybody can have fantasies and different things that for them they would do, but it wouldn't like apply to
and
the
I think this is
population.
where at least how we have applied this ethical framework uh it breaks down is because like you can always case by case things, and
Mhm.
it's so challenging to find a universal maxim. Like you can find a case by case where hiring is good and autonomous war machines are good and using it as a therapist is helpful, right?
Yep.
But you can also almost always find a case where it's not, and so when you try to like strive for that universal maxim, it's so hard to find.
Mhm.
Your
That's
maxim turns into a 800-page thesis.
caveats,
Yeah,
yeah.
with caveats of
So it is always true in this case where X and Y and Z are all also conditions.
and E equals M times C,
Mhm.
and we'll square that.
But I think it's interesting that goes back to the I versus we though.
And can you
True.
separate them?
Mhm.
It's true.
Because if I'm an alien anthropologist and I'm applying decision making frameworks to the population, there is no difference between
Mhm.
you and the actual like, so it's a sample or the population group, and you as a sample have to be representative of the population. And so when you make an internal personal decision, that's still reflective of the population as far as like the alien anthropologist might go.
Okay, so here's maybe just to kind of play on 11 a little bit more. Even if we could agree that it is ethical for themselves, if we could agree that it's ethical for themselves, does it become unethical when they leave their home and it's now affecting other people?
That's
Oh,
very
that's the keep it in the bedroom argument.
Yeah,
yeah.
because all of a sudden this thing that could have no danger and no harm in someone's house now could cause danger or impact others.
I would think that if it is the resulting behavior is like impacting other people, like let's say because it like degrades your like social awareness or whatever we're saying the consequences are, I don't know. I don't even know if we have like real research yet because it's such a new thing, But let's postulate that there is some deleterious social consequence. Then I would say it's absolutely unethical because you're impacting or putting other people at risk. And so you would lose whatever universal maxim you had applied to you as a singular case.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
does Kant ethics just apply to sphere of influence?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. Maybe I
Or
don't.
impacts?
Yeah, I
Right.
think
So-
Kantian ethics probably applies to impact, but Kant did weird things. He talked about agents. He talked about like ownership of consequence and stuff. And so I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't really know because Kant also wasn't separate from religious
Mhm.
ethical frameworks either. And so a lot of like deontological ethics appeals to like a biblical or some religious structure. And so I think it's probably just way more complex than we're treating it.
Yeah. So like use the definition thing that I didn't think about earlier. Act only according to maxims at the same time that it should become a universal law. Can you make a law in the land that everyone should be allowed?
Yeah, as long as they can't
like-
leave their house, you know. No, I mean, you know what I mean. Yeah. Yeah.
You have an AI girlfriend, you don't get to leave your house.
No, I mean, like if you were to create a universal law that didn't, you guarantee couldn't have outcomes, like
Yeah.
you know.
That's so
Is that
good.
ethical?
Is that ethical? Is it ethical to
Well, they
lock
could leave. The girlfriend can't. So
the AI girlfriend?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
clarifying.
I has that on their phone now.
Uh,
You can take it outside.
Yeah.
were there any of
It's in the
these
cloud.
others on this list that you guys were interested in diving into?
I think you could.
Number 10 is interesting.
Okay, we did touch on it a little bit, but I think there is a good conversation there. So, number 10, I have written down as a therapist / counselor. So, is it ethical to, let me reframe the question a little bit. Is it ethical to allow AI to act as a therapist or counselor? And assume that you're like a regulating body and you're sort of making the decision on medical ethics. Is it ethical to allow AI to be a therapist or counselor?
Well, here's a fun thought experiment.
Oh no. Does it involve locking people in their homes?
No.
No,
Okay.
they chose to be there.
And it makes the problem interesting too, because you could say the same thing of like, if it's the individual, you know, like maybe it's fine, but if it doesn't affect others, you're like, okay, now just keep adding people to a room and have them being counseled by AI and like them, you know, you say like, you have it like say, okay, you got this should happen, this is how you should change or blah blah blah. And it's like, I think that um it is unethical by design, but the way you can make it ethical is through actually I actually don't think you can make it ethical. That's mine. I was gonna say like there might be narrow parts of like,
I love when that happens when you're like formulating your own argument and like you get to a point where like, actually, you know what?
well, I guess what I'm saying is
Actually,
like
no.
I do that all the time.
the part that makes me take a pause is like, okay, what about physical therapy? And you're using AI to help you with workout routines or like help you like exercise schedule, and it's not a matter of mental health, but rather physical health. And
That's a really, really interesting distinction because I'm much more inclined to be like, yeah, if you use an AI to plan your workout routine, full send, not a problem to me. I could probably arrive at a place where I think it's a problem, but like gut reaction is like
every single day.
yeah, and you're like, okay, it's harming my body because it made a bad workout plan, but you can also get a personal trainer that harms your body because they're uneducated. So like that's a little feels less icky. But when you're like as a like
mental
therapist, like a psychology thing, that somehow immediately you're like, ew.
But then but to be fair, some people view weightlifting and other things as like this full embodiment, and so it's like, I think it could be subdivided is my go-to on this.
I think what we've learned is everything has to be subdivided, and there's no universal ethical frameworks, and ethics are subjective.
Or nothing's ethical.
Or nothing's ethical. Yeah.
or nothing's ethical. I personally believe that.
Or nothing can be proven to be always ethical.
I personally think that within a given context, you can find objective moral truths, but overall ethics is subjective. But that's a whole different conversation. Okay, so therapist or counselor, we decided not ethical. And as a regulating body, you should not ever.
You're asking for a world of trouble.
Yeah. But it does, this whole conversation is very interesting, has really circled around this idea of like, we want the human in the human, and also the humans are problematic, and AI is just a mirror. We're holding a mirror up to ourselves with AI, where we're saying AI is problematic because of ingrained human problems. It's very interesting. It's a looking at yourself in the mirror.
But also, okay, just to play on that a little bit, you keep going back to like, well, a governing body that would have to do it, but that would mean that they would be defining ethics, and also it's for that country, not the world. You know, like different countries can decide.
Kant world, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Kind of is just one.
Yeah.
Period.
True.
Yeah. I mean, I just used the governing body as a way to frame the topic for you.
Gotcha.
To think about it, to like sort of come to a conclusion.
Because it is universal law, so it is an easy.
It is like
metaphorical jump. To
maybe
go.
like I could have expanded it out better, but like you're God. Decide if this is ethical.
This framework that you're deciding to.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to move on to the final topic that I have here, which is sort of a hypothesis that I have that I'm very interested in your guys' thoughts on, because we've talked a lot about rule-based ethics, right? Applying rules to find an ethical outcome. And so my hypothesis is that AI safety and how we're building safeguards around AI for real-world application is literally just the practical application of deontological ethics. It is deontological ethics applied. And that's sort of like the challenge that, as I understand it, and I'm not in the AI space, it's just from my understanding and reading in videos and stuff, that seems to be like the challenge we're trying to reach is like, how do you make strict rule-based things to guardrail ethics for software? And I think it applies to more than just AI, but all these different things. That's my hypothesis, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think of that hypothesis.
I think the way it's applied with AI though is regional and individual. Like you can have different rules applied for different people because you're a provider of any scale, and so you can define that this country is allowed to do this person is allowed to do that, and can enforce it unevenly.
So you're saying that you have to like subdivide it into domains.
Yeah, because
but let me say this. You are, again, you're God. And you have many different disparate realities that you're arbitrating over.
Altman.
Or so. You have many disparate different realities that you're arbitrating over, and they're all slightly different. And your job is to apply ethical frameworks to each disparate reality, right? Within specific rule sets, right? You're trying to create rules for universal maxims of truth. And that to me is what the AI safety conversation seems to be, is like within a given domain, you're trying to find a practical rule that you can put in, whether you want to call it the code or the basal level, that guardrails these machines.
I think
maybe, and it's just like the applied deontological ethics.
But I think the way AI usually goes though is it's ethics in the training data sets that are selected, it's the pre-training, post-training, it's the actual inference itself, it's the being able to analyze the outputs as well as the inputs. And so like at every stage you can define different decisions and apply various methods there. So it's not like an all or nothing kind of approach.
What are your thoughts, Tyler?
No. So one of the big things that they do whenever they're trying to set up frameworks in like a very, very, very simple way, they'll put in a system prompt. It's not really at that level. They do it in many different ways. They'll say, do not tell users how to make a bomb. That is a universal maxim of that AI model, period.
And that to me is...
Do not let them make a bond.
Sort of where I drove my hypothesis, because that screams Kantism to me. But go ahead and continue.
And how they apply it is very specific down to the things. Because what they'll ask for certain research groups or universities is they're like, hey, I need to know how to make chemical agents because I'm in charge of making the antidote. So it removes the thing. And then they have to go, okay, so don't let them make chemical, not even bioweapons. What's the word I'm looking for? Infectious diseases. Don't let them make unless they're in a research facility. Unless we note that they might be an insider that actually just got to the university so that they could do the thing. Like they are attempting AI safety in that way because they will, as like a company, whether it's like an Anthropic or whoever, will be like, we do not want the model doing blah. And then someone will come to them and go, we want it to do X. See recent news, right? And then they go, no, and they'll try to stand on it or they won't. But even in the specific cases, they will then go, okay, well, then we need to etch it out and make essentially what is a maxim more fine-tuned. You can't make chemical things unless you prove to me that you're a professor that is researching it because you actually are antidotes or you need to study it for whatever or however it goes. And it goes kind of all the way down that like they will even get to the point of like, how do we make sure there's not rules so there's not a gun-shaped hole? If you can go in and hit a, you're prompting and you can find the edge of everything it doesn't tell you, you now know what to be found.
I think the way I've seen it play out, like at least in open source AI, is that you have things that can be sharp, that can do these things, but you create an open source model that's for the medical community. You create an open source model that's for this industry, and it's only able to be used by people proven to be that, and then everything else is locked down so it can't do that. So you just basically have to do it either with, like you said, fine tuning, post training, or whatever, and the people that have the ability to work with information have it. And of course, it's really dangerous if people get a hold of those things, but it's like that's the trade off that you're doing.
So is them doing that deontological ethics?
Basically,
I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is a good example of it because it has such wide reach. And as much as you want to say in X country, domain, yada yada, it's on the internet. Nothing stops anyone from going to those things. They just VPN in or out. Have secondary accounts. There's pretty much endless ways around it, and they're constantly battling the attempt at universal rules to don't let this have harm. Obviously not succeeding because it is.
Well, then you can also just find an open source one that doesn't have the guards.
Yeah, exactly.
So hypothesis confirmed. I'm right.
I think so.
No more testing needed.
No,
it's now a theory.
Yeah, let me just delete this.
You only have common access. Get wrecked, nerd. The extension of my hypothesis, or the secondary claim that I made in here, is that it's anytime we apply ethics to human-created machines, whether it's a piece of software that's free of AI, whether it's a autonomous robot on an assembly line, any application of ethics is the practical application of deontological ethics.
In machinery?
In any human-created.
Oh, in any human-created. What are laws? What are laws but the attempt at deontological ethics for a given population?
Yeah.
And what are laws? Threats.
Threats made by the socioeconomic elites.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
Hour 20-ish.
All right. I think this was good. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
I think so. I think it was really interesting to kind of take each one of these as like a vertical, and to, even if we feel morally obligated one way or the other, to try to take it at like a moral philosophy that we don't usually hold ourselves.
Well, yeah, I think like one of the things with it, period, like I think I said pretty much all of them were unethical. And I'm like, am I going to use AI in hiring at some point? Probably for certain things of like, I need to see what is the most semantically similar experience to the job I have.
It's kind of a funny thing because
I'm like, that's useful.
if I took AI out of the title of this podcast and I just said, hey, judge all these things on the basis of their ethics, we would probably have a very similar conversation. Because if I'm like, hey, is job replacement outside of AI ethical? Same conversation. If I go hiring, well, we talked about that at length. It's not ethical. It's never going to be ethical.
No.
So I think, like we said earlier, AI is just a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's the same problems all the way down.
And also, AI is just ML, which is just inference, which is just like math and
yeah.
program. You know, but like at every step, it's just like, you know, there's something that's above. So,
and I think that's fair to point out at the very end. I treated AI as very general, like as the whole thing. And like a lot of these things fall into the different, like the Venn diagram of what is AI and like different components of it. So it's not fair to just treat them all as the same. It's not all generative AI. It's not all LLM. It's not all, whatever you call it. I'm not in the space.
yeah.
Whatever you tech bros call it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, like,
boys.
I'm curious if
boy.
I'm curious if Kant like would even go as far if he took this to its nth degree. Like, would the only ethical thing for you to do is just to live off the land by yourself, not affecting anyone else, like in your own circle, you know? And it's like not striving for any progress, not striving for anything other than your own.
So
Well, that was kind of my question earlier of like, is progress ethical?
Yeah.
So that is, if you watch The Good Place, which you should.
Yes.
Which just has a very like overtone of literally this entire deontological ethic. Character Chidi is like the Kantiest and gets sent to the bad place for sitting on the fence and never making a decision. But the like good person, I forgot what his name is, Jeremy something. He does just live off the land and
Jeremy.
No, that's the time cycle.
Damn.
Yeah. He does just like isolation, gives all money to things, only eats like the snails that have like died of natural causes within him. And it's like kind of like a showing from like the showrunners of like, here's it to the nth degree. And it also kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
so I generally would describe myself as like some form of utilitarianist because it works better for how I see the world. But the best way you describe utilitarianism is it's icky. Because there's always some way to take a utilitarian argument and go, well, actually, in this use case, it's actually more moral to kill my mom. And you're like, ew.
Yeah.
That feels
should you
wrong.
kill one healthy person to give the organs to the 5 sick ones?
That is the classic definition of like, you can save 5 people and murder 1 person. Well, that's ethical.
Or you kill 5 and you save 25.
Yeah.
Good point.
Which, I mean, organ harvesting.
Ethical. Because it saves more people.
What if we get rid of all homeless people and give those organs to people who contribute more to society?
In some frameworks
framework and some very messed up person would be like, yeah, and we go, that's messed up, but the math isn't.
Works out.
So yeah, ethics is always gross. It's always icky. One last question for both of you. I didn't let you prep for it. AI, is it ethical?
Oh.
Under Kantianism.
Oh, under Kantianism? No.
I think you can subdivide it to a point where it is.
AI as a universal maxim is always ethical, no matter what.
No subdividing.
No subdivision allowed. Okay. I think that's true of most things, though, to be fair. Like, driving's never ethical, but we all have to do it. And so, thank you, guys. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to indulge my own intellectual curiosities.
Yeah. And thanks for listening to A Novel Thought.
Yeah, thanks for listening to A Novel Thought. We'll catch you on the next one.